Wonderful to meet you and have you here. So I think we need to hear a little bit more about you as a person. Also, I'm intrigued to note that somebody who's worked with female conductors might think it's different than working with male conductors, and we may need to hear a little bit more about that.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. Because there are not many of you, clearly. And,
but Patrick actually has worked with many of us.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, Patrick.
Right?
We need to hear a little bit more about this.
We're not many, so...
Because this is a completely new area for most audiences. They have not come across many female conductors, and it's wonderful to see them coming up and holding their own. But is it a different ballgame?
Between a man and a woman,
yes.
Conductor? I think it's probably remiss of me to reduce it to gender. I don't. But the reason why I have worked with a number of women is because in my capacity as the CEO and artistic director of a large opera company in Australia, I think that it is important that we create opportunities for women which haven't been there before. And I think the reason why there aren't many female conductors is because they haven't been given the opportunity. And you know, there's this horrible thing that we could talk about, you know, this whole idea of meritocracy and that women aren't good conductors.
Why? You know, why was it the case that it was only the men that were promoted and not the women? What was it about conducting?
If a man gets up in front of an orchestra and makes a mistake, he's forgiven. I think if a woman gets up in front of an orchestra and makes a mistake, they are immediately dismissed. That's right.
So we always have to live to a much higher standard.
Yeah.
In every aspect of our lives.
And being a conductor is the ultimate leadership position you can have in music.
Absolutely.
So obviously it was made.
For all these years, until someone like you had the opportunity to consider this as a career choice. But even when you were presented with it,
initially
you were taken aback and said, "Is this for me?" Tell us a little bit more about that.
So it was, I mean, there is one woman in the picture, her name is Marina also, and she is the most famous female conductor that exists right now and for the last 40 years on Earth, because she was the first one that she was an assistant to Leonard Bernstein, and she really tried very hard for many years to like be there and survive herself into this world, and she did it very well. And she like recently said, I don't know why I've been trying for 30 years and no one has come up after me. Like, she's really been trying and there hasn't been a follow-up. And I think this is because, yes, we were not ready for it. I've seen a huge change in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, the past 10 years have been like fundamentally different for female conductors, and this was since Marina started a fellowship called the Takialso Fellowship, and then the Dallas Institute, to which like I belong to, started also a kind of fellowship for women conductors. So there were a lot of movement happening, especially in America, but now I think Europe is also following up to start bringing that up, because they realize that they're a bit late. And I know female conductors of the past that they never had the chance to do anything. Like they had to really fight to struggle. So there are women that wanted to do it and were not allowed, and then there are women like me that hadn't thought of doing that because I was coming from Greece, and like I had never, like it hadn't even crossed my mind that I might be able to think of that. So what happened, because she knows the story and maybe you don't, is that when I arrived to United States to do my doctorate in piano, after having already been in London for 10 years and Austria for 2 years, and I was a very accomplished pianist in Europe and well known for what I did, which was vocal accompaniment. I always worked with singers. So I arrived to Miami by mistake, and again by mistake I decided to take conducting because I needed to fill up some credits for the university. So it's not that I saw conducting and I said, oh, that's for me. I just saw conducting and I thought that's easier than analysis at the point. I thought I'll move my hand for 6 months and everything will just be okay. After a semester I'll like settle in Miami and everything. So I went to this, I called the conducting teacher. His name is Thomas Sleeper, and he was a huge educator in the University of Miami for like 20, 30 years. He brought out generations of youth orchestras, of orchestral musicians. So I called him and I said to him, I want to come to your class. And he said, what's your relationship to conducting? And I said, none. And there was a pause on the phone. And then he said, okay, come and we see. Like, come tomorrow morning to the first class and we see. So I went to the first class and it was myself and 7 composers, male, in the class. And because he was also a composer, so a lot of composers took the class, which is important for them to understand what a conductor does. And I feel, I'll say that now, very, very fortunate that my conducting teacher was not a conductor, but it was a composer, because that's the reason I know the score. I know how to study a score. Most conducting teachers that haven't been something else show choreography. They show how you move nicely your hands to be liked. Seriously, I will do that. So, but in that case, Thomas was very, like he's a composer. So what I got to was like the first class. He like brought a score out and he said, okay, that's what we do in conducting. And it had nothing to do with movement. We didn't move anything in our body. He just showed us what conducting is about. And at the end of the class, he said, and I'm going to do a test for all of you. So I'll put a recording of one piece, and you have to tell me which of the 2 versions you like and why. So he put Beethoven 9th Symphony, and like 7 composers chose number 1, and I chose number 2. And I was like, probably I'm wrong, since I'm the only one that likes number 2. So he said to me, why do you like that? And I started talking. I said to him, because I hear that and that and that. So he said, okay, stay at the end. So everyone left and I stayed, and he said to me, you are taking my class because of what I heard you heard. So I want you to take the class, and it is just a conducting class, like 4 credits, so it was just a class in the university. So I started taking the class, and of course the world that this class opened up was huge, like it was something else, because suddenly I realized there is much more to what I already knew. And in what I did, which was the vocal accompaniment, I knew enough. I could know more, but I knew enough. I had done a career on it. So suddenly there was a new thing opening up, and I loved it. So it was very challenging for my brain, and I kept going to the classes very happily at 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I did that, and a month in, he called me into his office and he said, I know you have to become a conductor, so I want you to change your doctorate from piano to conducting. And I looked at him and I said to him, I can't, I'm a woman. And he looked at me like he had seen a ghost, and he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, I am a woman. And he said, yeah, and you can go to the moon if you want, because you're in the United States. So if you want, like, you want to go to the moon, you want to become a conductor, whatever you want, you just have to prove to me that you study like crazy for the next 4 years and you can support what I'm gonna show you. So I said, okay, let me think about it. And I took a week off. During that week I went to England for a masterclass, which was very, very nice. And I realized the differences that I had been living in Miami music making and London music making, very different worlds. So I went back, and as soon as I went back, I found him in the garden. I said to him, Amon, what do you want me to do? And he said, you come to my rehearsal in 10 minutes, get that score out and mark everything you hear. So he actually didn't take me. Like, he said, I'll just put you through tests. And the tests were extremely difficult. Like, I remember one lesson. He said to me, I'll teach you every morning at 6 a.m. So if you want to take it 6 a.m., you're here every morning, because I have to prepare you for the audition, because you will be auditioning with people that have had masters, which means years of conducting, and you've had 10 classes. So you don't know anything about conducting. If you want, I'll prepare you and you might fail. But if you like really are up to it, I'll be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I went there every morning at 6 a.m. We had lessons. There were lessons that I remember me like being stuck on the wall, and he was going like again, like for 2 hours. And it was very, very hard. Like it wasn't an easy process at all. And then 2 months later, I had my audition, and he took me. He said, and he took one person every 4 years. So this meant that I would have orchestra from day one. So he said to me, go home, study for 6 months because I'm taking a sabbatical, and come back in 6 months ready to take on orchestra, which is not easy. And he also said to me, you're risking everything because I'm taking you on, but you might fail. And you're losing a doctorate in piano and a doctorate in conducting in this case. So are you okay for
So the risk was extraordinary.
The risk was extraordinary. And I said, yes, I'm ready. So I went. And he said to me, I remember the day he took me, he looked at me and he said, I know where you will be in 10 years. If you do what I say and if you study as you must. So it's all up to you. I'll do everything, but then it's all on you. And 10 years later, I was conducting in Carnegie Hall. And